by telling you what I told you when we first saw each other tonight, which is that I enjoyed this book and learned from this book so much more than I expected to on both fronts.
That hurt, by the way, when you said that.
And you responded in a way that surprised me, so I think you should share with the audience. Why does that surprise you? Why are people expecting to meet this sort of glad-handing, insubstantive guy, and then shocked to see that there's a lot of wisdom out there?
You know, I think when you're blessed with the shocking amount of charisma that I come with, that one just defaults in a cynical world to think that there's not a lot behind that. And the reason I responded well was that, you know, when I set out to write this book, I realized that my brother AJ, and the VaynerMedia family was doing progressive work, and that we were ahead of it. And I felt much more similar to the way I did when I wrote Crush It, which is I'm doing things right now that 3 to 4 years from now will be considered smart. That 3 or 4 years from today, if the people that read this book or do the work that we're doing in our organization do it, it would be considered smart and current. And when you've got that much of an advantage on where the market's going, book feels right, because book takes time. You know, I thought of this whole thing 11, 12, 13, 14 months ago, and by the time it comes out, in a world where I'm, you know, if I have a thought, I want to put it out immediately, you know, things of that nature. And so it felt right. But I did want to remind everybody, you know, this is where I get a little selfish with this. I have a lot of heart to reminding the marketplace as a whole that, you know, I know what I'm doing, and I drive actual business results. And so coming from you, knowing your background, knowing that you're not a Vayniac, you don't have vested interest in consuming this and that notion, I set out to write that book.
Right. And yet, when I look at the social media landscape, I feel this tremendous pressure. And so I have this chip on my shoulder when I see someone who's attracted this unbelievable engaged following. I feel like, you know, my whole life is devoted to winning friends, influencing people. And now I got to go home and I have to have a Facebook and a Twitter and a Pinterest and a Tumblr and everything else. And when does it cross the line from something I'm doing for fun into something that becomes a job?
Well, were you doing that for fun?
I think so, yeah. I put some care into it.
You know, and I think that becomes the question, right? People always ask me, they see all the logos at the bottom of this book and set up the question, like, that, you know, there's all this stuff going on, and I try to remind people that, you know, innovation doesn't have any heart for us. You know, innovation technology doesn't care about our feelings or our lack of time. The marketplace doesn't care what your problem is. It's going to continue to evolve, and the consumer's going to expect and want what it wants. And then you have the choice to do what you want to do. I mean, this could be an exercise book. I, in theory, understand what it takes to get a six-pack and some, you know, and you know, some muscles, but I don't have them. I can read about it. I know what to do, but I'm not putting in the work. I just wanted to write the book to give people the tools to be able to market on Snapchat and Vine and things of that nature if they wanted to. But it's ultimately up to every person, every company, every individual organization to decide if they want to execute it. You know, that's just the way it is.
So let's talk about some of those tools. One of the jiu-jitsu stories you told me involved your beloved Jets, and I'll have a moment of silence for this unbelievably chaotic season they're having. So you told me that that the Jets, a mutual friend of ours, came to sell you a skybox, and the next thing you know, you walked out with your company's first client. How do you do that? How do you turn these relationships and not only sell them something, but have them become lifelong friends who are texting you or into your stuff?
Well, I think the first part of when Matt Higgins came to Wine Library to sell Wine Library a skybox at the new MetLife Stadium, and by the time he left, the New York Jets were the first VaynerMedia client, has a hell of a lot more to do with my stunningly unbelievable salesmanship skills, more so than anything else. I think that keeping that relationship to where it is today is really the whole crux of your first question, which is, you know, you can sell the sizzle all you want. The only way to have actual lifetime value or real customers or grow in scale is to be able to deliver on the steak. And so that relationship and most of my work and this outrageous turnout, which means the world to me, and I'm paying very close attention to every face in the building. I see you back there, Blitzstein, with your nice hat. I think that comes from actual execution, and so that's how I see it.
Great. So let's talk about some of the execution examples in this book. Every page is a life lesson, and something I like about this book is I learned as much from the examples that didn't work as the ones that did. So let's talk about a few that didn't work. You use the BlackBerry example right next to the Microsoft example. Why don't you tell us why BlackBerry, which had put all of its eggs into this relaunch of this new product, why did it fail?
You know, I'll go specific into this, but I think for the value of everybody in the crowd, here's what it comes down to, and I want to set this up. The main #1 overall reason that most people are struggling with social networks and getting ROI and value and return on it and all that stuff that people care about is their lack of respect for the context of the room in which they deliver the content. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
What this whole book was about, and when we talked about the Twix example and things of that nature, when we talked about the logo, and Microsoft doing a good job with the Nemo stuff, BlackBerry not thinking about how somebody would actually use it, it all comes down to the same basic thing. 99%, listen, I was paying attention to who checked in on Foursquare when they were here, or who's tweeting about this, and then I was just kind of literally in real time in the green room auditing people's social media accounts. The truth is, here we are heading into 2014, and 99% of people out there are using social networks as distribution to awareness to something else. We're literally using Facebook and Twitter as modern day email newsletters. We're just blasting out so you see something else, right? That's what we're doing. And so the examples in that, as all 86 examples in this book, and as every example that I look at every day, they're not taking into account the biggest thing that I take into account on Facebook, which is 90% of you guys are at this point are consuming it mobile. You're going like this. This is what we're doing. Let's call it what it is. You have 1/100th of a second to stop somebody and tell them that story. And if you're not thinking about what your picture is doing, what colors you're using, what's in the bottom left-hand corner, what are you going to say in those 8 words of copy that lay over the picture? And so those were 2 examples of one company, both old school companies, but not really respecting the context of the platform. Not putting their logo in the picture, not posting at the... My favorite example in this book, hands down, is the Kit Kat example. Kit Kat did an unbelievable job with their Super Bowl post. You know, Kit Kat bars, when you break them apart, what they did was they made the Roman numerals of the current Super Bowl for a Facebook post out of Kit Kat bars. Perfect, right? Clever. I see a lot of people shaking their head. The kind of thing you'd be like, ah, funny. Like, they even put their logo, or at least their kind of like quote in the bottom corner, something I believe in, great job. Everything's right. The picture's clean. They put in effort. Everything's right. Except they posted this post at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? Now, that's one thing. That's one thing. Here's where it gets worse. 6 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. Oh, by the way, one of the teams that was playing in that Super Bowl last year was the San Francisco 49ers. So that means, yeah, big love. That was that Marcus. 6 o'clock in the morning Eastern, fine. Maybe you'll catch a couple of early morning Raven fans. 3 o'clock in the morning San Francisco time. In this 24-hour world, Ken, if there's 1 hour that America truly sleeps across the board, it is 3 to 4 a.m. And so by posting it at that time, they missed out on so much opportunity. And I think the thing for some of the old school marketers in the room that I really want to make sure everybody understands is, for the first time ever, the creative itself forces distribution. It actually creates distribution. If you made the greatest TV commercial of all time 10 years ago, and it was great, and you paid Viacom a certain amount of money to run those commercials, they gave you that inventory. And the variable was the quality of the commercial, which drove emotion and conversion, and that's what happened. But in social, because all of us become the distribution mechanism with our actions and our shares and our passing on, for the first time ever in our society, in our marketing storytelling world, the creative itself is the engine to distribution, and that's why we have to take it more seriously.
Yeah, that's. You end with a heavy note there, but it's really well taken. And I see myself in my own reading patterns. Even if a story looks interesting to me, if it has very few shares or very few comments, I feel like the marketplace has already judged it to be uninteresting. So I'm susceptible to the exact same thing. Let's talk a little bit about the success stories that are in the book. One of the ones I thought was interesting that you considered a success because it violated one of your key rules was the Mini Cooper. What do you want to call it? The Mini Cooper posting?
Yeah, I mean the post. Yeah, I mean that's such a great brand, right? And one thing I want to make sure that everybody who decides to pick up the book and goes through it, I want to prefix in the fact that I'm looking at one specific post within social media. So, you know, Arby's, I think it does a solid job. They have the single worst Pinterest pin post I've ever seen, and I used it in this book, and it hurts my feelings to hurt them when they're doing overall good work. Mini Coupe, you know, that was the logo, right? Remind me, it's been a little while since
they didn't have the logo, but the car was recognizable enough.
And at the end of the day, when you're as lucky as Mini Coupe and your thing is so recognizable that maybe you don't necessarily need that post in the corner with the logo.
Mm-hmm.